Welcome to iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. Here we bring entrepreneurs and their business to their audience and communities as well as ours. We welcome and connect with them to share who they are and what they do. Authors, entrepreneurs, we extend the invitation to promote your business here on our podcast and in iPen Magazine. Your article, your story, your promotions, how you can connect with others, a new audience, a quarterly magazine presented online for all to view and subscribe to. For articles, ads, and subscriptions, please contact ipendesigns@gmail.com. For your viewing, you can see past articles, past interviews on www.nanettembuchanan.com. Welcome to the show. Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Nanette Buchanan, and this is iPen Visions Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. And we welcome you all to another week of our, I don't know if you want to call it zany or you want to call it hilarious or you want to call it just down to earth people. We try to connect the community here. That's what we're doing. We're networking with different people from different walks of life, from different journeys, because we want to show people basically how to get started. Some people are stuck. And then we also want to talk about community information, as well as information that we're going through as far as a community. And for the last month and a half, we've been talking about children in the schools, turning into young adults and being either guided or misguided by the system, or guided or misguided by their home life, or guided or misguided by peer pressures. So I think that this will be beneficial to not only the adults in the audience, but they can share it with their children to show them that some people, some of us did have it rough, but we still made it. So we want to make sure that they get an idea of that. And we love, love, love the opinion of others. So if you are online and you're looking at us live, please join into the conversation. But before that, I want to bring to the stage my partner. And I always say my partner in crime. Listen, guys, it's not really crime. Okay, don't take it verbatim. It's not really crime. After all, I kind of know what crime is. I kind of have that background. So I do realize that saying partner in crime just means that she makes sure she covers up for me, because that's what most partners in crime do. So I welcome to the stage, as always, my friend, Felice Reeves. Good evening, dear. How are you?
Well, I think it's a crime right now that my allergies are on 1,000.
Well, you know what? It must be a spree then, because there's a lot of folks suffering from the allergies this time of year with all of the pollen and all of and it doesn't matter, like it could come in cold, it could come in warm. This time of year is just a kick-in for everybody that has problems with their snozulas. Yes. If you got a problem with your nose, problem with your breathing, this time of year will do it to you. So,
and I also want to say, I think we should change our little tagline from partners in crime to partners in crime fighting. Just because
in crime fighting. Okay, we're going to the superhero thing. Okay.
No, I think after
Yeah, we kind of save folks too. No, okay. All right, our presentation's and you know what that is? That is pretty good, because if our information that you get, especially information when we zoom in on topics like we're doing this month and we did last month, if we're zooming in on topics where it will help, please look at the replays. Please pay attention to what our guests are saying, because a lot of the information is vital information, especially a guest like we have tonight. We got a special guest tonight.
Yes,
we got a special guest. We've got a special guest with some years in. That's what they used to tell me, when I started in my profession. Wait until you get years in. So we're talking to somebody that has years in a profession that we want to acknowledge and honor, especially going into the season that we're going into with the children going into school and them going into the communities. And what do they get when it's broken. What happens when other things go on? Is there a system set up to help them go where they have to go? And then sometimes is there a system that has to correct them as they go?
Yeah.
Or a system that has to correct the family as they go. How is that done? But our guests specialized in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk to him about it, and we welcome him. We welcome him. We welcome him. Our guest tonight is Mr. Lance Hillsinger.
Yay.
Yeah, he's tonight's guest, and we want to welcome you, sir. We want to give you all the kudos that we normally give our guests. But putting you right on the spot. I'm going to start right out. We're putting you on the spot because what we don't do here is we don't introduce our guests. We let the guests introduce themselves. I mean, after all, you know who you are. We don't. The audience knows who you are. We got a little snippet of who you are with your bio and different things, but you know who you are. So we want the guests to get it from you. Not get it from us, so that they can't say, oh, you left out he was this and you left out he was that. We're giving it to you so that you can give it to them. Who is Lance Hillsinger?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to thank you for having me on your show. It's a real privilege. As I said, my name's Lance Hillsinger. I was a child welfare social worker for 34 years. First 5 years in Los Angeles County. The last other years in San Luis Obispo County, which is just north of Santa Barbara. For all but one of those years, I handled court cases of one type or another, and my choice assignment among court cases, which I held for most of the time, was what's called a court investigator. And that is the person who writes the initial detention report in court when a child goes into foster care. And foster care can be placement with a relative. Just over half of placements are with relatives nationwide. And then we handle it through the case. The court worker handles it through what we call the jurisdictional dispositional hearing. The jurisdictional hearing is what are the facts, what happened, and it's usually, but not always, combined with what we call the dispositional hearing. What are we going to do? And typically in court, you get a new social worker or family gets a new social worker after the dispositional hearing. That's done for a variety of reasons. Some cases, cases are dismissed by that case. What I mean by dismissed doesn't mean that things didn't happen. You can have a situation where the abuse or neglect occurred in the mother's home. The court takes jurisdiction and then grants the father custody. If he's a stand-up guy, not a problem. You can do that. It doesn't happen that often, but it happened. So if I talk about cases going on, that doesn't mean that a case is dismissed because it's groundless. I don't want people to be misinterpreted about that. And California is rather unique in that the petition that says, court, judge, this child has been abused or neglected by such and such a code section, the social worker files that petition. In most states, it's an assistant attorney general that files that legal document. We file both the petition, we meaning the social worker, and the detention report, which is also referred to as a declaration. These are what I believe the facts are true. Now, the court worker may be relying on what a police officer saw, or a psychologist, or a doctor, a combination of things, or what the child says, what the parent said. But their declaration is, I believe these facts are true based upon what I know today.
Right. Okay.
And it's a very gratifying job. I enjoyed it immensely. We were a small county. San Luis Obispo was only a one-judge county. And the same judge handles cases when a child's abused. Under California law, there are 300. Okay? There you come under section 300 of the Welfare and Institutions Code. A juvenile who commits crime is a 602. So if a kid commits a crime and they need to be removed from the home, not because they've been abused, but because they've been serious, not just a typical shoplifting or something very serious, they're 602. I used to joke that what we needed was a 341, something in between.
Something in between.
And over the years of my career, they had 241.1, so not quite in between, where if a child was a little bit of both, of say a child in foster care commits a crime, should it go to probation? Should it go continue under child welfare? There's now a provision by which the probation department and child welfare agree and write a joint report. It doesn't happen that often, but there's now this protocol there that's supposed to be followed. So I did that as a court worker for most of my career. The first year was the emergency response worker. That's the person who goes out, they get a report, they go with or without the police. And that's a very challenging job. I mean, all the jobs are challenging one way or the other, but you don't know your schedule. You knock on the door. Is that going to be 4 hours, 6 hours a day because the child's been abused? Now you have to take their old foster care, or they don't open the door. It was very hard to predict your day with that job. Court worker, I was very grateful I could predict my job a little more, some regularity. Okay, this day I'm going to be at court. This day I have a meeting. This day I got to be here. So a little more. You did make some unannounced phone calls, but not as much as you would as an emergency response worker. Then,
now, all of this is super fascinating. I didn't really mean to catch you off or jump in, but it's super fascinating. And it would seem to me that, you know, from your standpoint, when you get a call, you don't know what you're going to get, right? When you go on a call, right? And so it's like, you know, there are probably times that maybe your welfare was in danger or you know, things like that. So, so am I correct in that, or how do you know what you're going into when you get those calls?
That's true. You know, as I recall in my first book, there's a time when I step off the doorstep of a mobile home, a little small landing, just because I want to put some space between myself and the person answering the door. So there is some concern. I never personally had any experience where I felt threatened in the field. I had one client who threatened me while I interviewed him in jail and threatened me at the courthouse, but not in the field. It has happened occasionally to other workers. And then just to finish up my career, for roughly the past 10 years of my career, I was what's called a family reunification, family maintenance worker, which meant that after the child's declared dependent in court, what are you going to do? If the child's in foster home, you're going to go and try to reunify the child. If the child can be declared dependent of the court under court supervision, they can be home, but still under the supervision of the court. And that'll happen then, okay, the child goes home, but we're going to stay involved and make sure the mom's still getting into her drug program and so on, her parenting classes. And then if a child the parents have so many months, there's a very complicated set of rules regarding how many months they get. Normally it's no more than 18, but there's sometimes it can be as little as 6. So I don't want to bore your podcast with a bunch of bureaucratic regulations.
Right.
But then a child can be freed for adoption, or we go to a legal guardianship, a situation. We don't force relatives to adopt a child. So they may say, I hope my daughter it's usually the grandparents or on the maternal side. We don't force them to adopt their child. So they may want to say, I want a legal guardianship, or they, you know, and then that's how the case is dismissed. Cases eventually do get dismissed. Either that or the child used to be, they were dismissed when the child turned 18. Now there's a provision where they can continue on until 21 is what's called a dependent, a dependent child of the court, a dependent adult of the court. So that's another improvement in the system.
Right. So let's just break down some of the things that you have said. And it's a fabulous career, especially if you're in it for the right reasons. If you're in it to make sure that the child is treated fairly, that the family that gets the child is treated fairly, because sometimes, you know, problems go from one household to another. So, you know, you got to make sure that everybody is getting what they should get. They should get the support that they need and anything else that they need to help take care of the child. And the system, I've broken down the system into 2 parts, youth and parents. And first I want to talk about the youth. And I want my audience to understand, and you can correct me, you know, at any point. But the thing about it is every state has different laws. Every state has different guidelines. Although they're similar, you have to remember that just because you're in one state and the court says you have to have a certain amount of time or a certain amount of things or a certain amount, it does not work the same in every state. I'm correct in saying that, am I not?
The federal government sets some various standards, but the actual mechanics, there are various standards that the states have to report to the federal government. For instance, out of 1,000 children, how many are abused again or neglected again in the next 18 months? And how many times do children have more than 3 foster care placements? Those types of statistics have to be reported to the federal government, and the federal government can kind of wag its finger at the local states and say, you have to improve in this area.
And the thing about the reason why I said that is because of the simple fact that we have to remember that depending on population, depending on availability of workers such as yourself, depending on all of that, there can be a system overload with how caseworkers come out, when caseworkers can come out. If there's an emergency, your caseworker might not get to you, on the scheduled day. There's different things that cause variations. And we want you to understand that, although this is unique as to how the system should run, it's just like when you go in Walmart. If you got to back up in a line, another line may open that never is open. Something else may happen that never is happening. You know what I mean? Every system that we go to, from the grocery store all the way up to, top politics, things change according to the need of the system. So
that's one of the things I wrote in my book, my first book. To finish up my career, I eventually retired, and then I've written 4 books since then. The first one is In Place of the Parent, Inside Child Protective Services.
Right.
And I write in the introduction, it's never-ending quest to do a better job.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
It's never ending, and each state develops laws and procedures that it thinks is best at that moment, but they're constantly under revision.
Exactly. And the thing, that's what I want people to understand, because my background went from working with children that were in systems. I didn't work in the system, but I was in the community. So a lot of kids that came to the Boys and Girls Club had foster homes. A lot of them had foster parents. A lot of them were living with their grandparents. A lot of them had to leave the boys club to go and meet the social worker who was coming at such and such a time to the home. So they had to be there so that they could have their meeting or whatever it is. So you have to understand that depending on your community and depending on where you are, there may be some rigid elbows that you got to go around to get things done, but know that in every office they're there. Know that there's someone there that can help you with whatever it is. Getting back to the system and our youth, though, how do you think, we know that it benefits them, because a lot of them are coming out of abusive homes. Some of them are coming out of separations where the parent can't take care of them. Some of them are coming into situations where there's been sickness or, health issues. All of that is a part of the system, and you're trying to fit them in with where they fit in. My question is, when does it become an overload? Because we've seen in various different situations where one caregiver may have 7 or 8 kids in their home, or one caregiver opens up their home and now they've got so many that they're taking in, even if it's temporary, even if it's an overnight thing where they couldn't be placed. Well, I'll take them in for this point of time, and then you come back and get them, but they don't come back and get them. So when is the system overloaded? Because I know that there's some, like workers like yourself. Have you found that sometimes you go down your list and you go, "Ooh, good grief, I got this many kids in only this many days"?
Well, that's what I say in my book. When I left LA County, I had 77 children in my caseload.
Wow.
And that was far, far, far too many.
Wow.
Just to talk briefly about how you talk about different systems, and even within California. For instance, I dealt mostly with county alcohol and drug services here with my cases in San Luis Obispo County. But in neighborhood Santa Barbara County, most of the time they dealt with a nonprofit that provided drug and alcohol services. They didn't deal with a county agency. That has a very big variance just in how you do it. It's just that minor thing. And I got to add this one pet peeve I have. One, in California, if you're poor enough, which is like 90% of the time, the parents get appointed, a court-appointed lawyer. But in some states, because it's considered a civil hearing in many ways, the parents have to represent themselves.
Wow.
And that to me is just outrageous. And so every opportunity I get to talk about that, I try to. I think it's going to get to the Supreme Court someday. That
so do they really have enough knowledge to represent themselves?
No.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
No, I wanted that to be put out there.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And it slows down the system when somebody has to represent themselves. So whether it's a criminal proceeding or not, or a child welfare system is. So it's
in an emergent situation where they do represent themselves, like you said, it puts a delay in the system, but it also doesn't benefit them or the child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I can't say how it happens because in California, we appoint everybody a lawyer unless if you're affluent to afford one. I had a few fathers, I can't recall it ever being a mother, who didn't qualify for appointed lawyers, were savvy business people, and that maybe they had an attorney at the beginning, and then they let go of the attorney, and they were able, because they were a non-defending parent. And it was winding to the end of the case. So maybe at the beginning they had an attorney, they see how things are going, and then the attorney says, okay, I don't need to represent you. You know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a quick question, or maybe not a quick question, but going back to the case overload. And as you said, 77 children to your one person, which is incredible. So, obviously there's a shortage. And obviously there's requirements and mindset that you have to meet to be a social worker, right? So talk about that a little bit, because how do we help more people get into, advocating for the youth? Hopefully, it doesn't come to getting into your realm, but, again, I'm imagining, I don't know how long ago it's been since you retired, but I'm imagining that there might be an increase to the ratio of children in the foster care system or in the court system to the representatives.
The number of children in foster care nationwide has been decreasing. I think the system has done a better part of identify which kids really need to go in and doing more. The federal government came in with some money, and if you make your case right, you could use some money that used to go to group homes to go to support children and families before the child's removed.
Nice.
There's some steps there. So there's been some improvement in that system. One of the things that I make a point is that a lot of people are criticism of child welfare, and some of it is sort of deserved. But one of the things that helps is foster parents. The more foster parents we have, there's especially after COVID, that made it very hard to recruit, maintain, and that hurt. And I think they're still recovering from that. Because if a social worker has to drive 45 minutes to a foster home, that's far more inefficient than if they have to drive 10 minutes.
Right.
And just that fact alone can make them. So anybody listening to this podcast, if you thought at all about being a foster parent, Google foster parents and your local county, and then, usually most states you go through a state agency. In California, you go through a county agency. And then, so I would encourage people to look into that. It's very rewarding. I tell people that they should steal the logo, the thing from the Peace Corps, the hardest job you'll ever love. That's what the Peace Corps slogan used to be, or it maybe still is. But that's foster parenting in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about those parents for a moment. We all know the cases where, people are looking to be foster parents. Those are ideal. Like automatically, that they're looking to do the right thing. They're looking to have the right thing. But then we have some, especially in communities that are I don't want to say overcrowded, but, condensed communities where you're looking at the grandmother becoming the foster parent, the aunt becoming the foster parent. We're not talking about the one that was looking for it. But because of certain situations, they become the extra. and they don't want to see the child go into the system, but they don't have the resources that they need, like you said, to fight anything other than going to a person such as yourself saying, hey, we don't want the child in the system. We will, foster the child, we'll do whatever we have to do, but we can't adopt, we can't, we just don't have those means, but we do have a roof, we do have food, we do have, access to family, that they can be with. What has become one of the main maybe setbacks when you have that type of situation?
Well, there's situations where, and stereotypically, it's the mother that abandons the children to her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for some reason, maybe the child needs to be enrolled in school or need medical care, then it's really advantageous for the grandmother to have the child come into the system, because that way she can get foster care.
Yeah.
She has some authority to roll if the mother says, well, I'm going to let my mother have educational rights. The grandmother could apply for welfare as a non-needy caretaker, or maybe as a needy caretaker if she has a welfare case of her own. But then financially, it's not as lucrative in one way. And also, it's a little bit easier to access things. It's, on the other hand, it's a little more normalized for the child. The social worker coming by, this. But I think in the long run, it's usually helpful, because then it spurs the mother, who typically, again, I'm talking stereotypically, she's had a drug problem or whatever. If she learns, hey, the court's taking my kid away, my child's still with my mother, but legally they're being taken away, that may spur the mother into getting into treatment, when otherwise she may just not get into treatment. So there's an advantageous to this. So this is going into the system is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. And in the past, we've frowned on some people, getting into those situations where they can't take care of their own children, or getting into the situations where, like you said, they're addicted, either or. Or having it where the child has a handicap or a special need. These are the children that we tend to frown upon when we say, well, the government gives money for this or money for that, because there's so many guidelines that also hinder the person that wants to take them in. If you take them in and you have the means, the government is not giving you any supplemental for the child.
Well, again, this is where the system getting involved, because you could be Bill Gates and you can still get foster care. Okay. You can be the richest person in the world. The foster care funds are dependent upon the parent's income. The caretaker will get whatever they're entitled to as foster care. Whether it comes out of the federal money or the state money depends upon the parent's income.
And that's something everybody should know, because the assumption is, if I take this kid in, and these are things that I've heard, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for that? This is an added expense. This is this. But what you're telling me now is, because of the federal government, and peace, but because of the federal government, we have a system that's set up where if you just go in and you just take the kid in, you can't jump on the welfare train. Because you're not, if you're not eligible for welfare, you're not going to get what you can get if you just go ahead and file the paperwork, as you said, for fostering.
It's two different
trains.
It's a little more complicated. You can file for guardianship, and go through, in California, go through the probate court. I don't know about how so you can do that, and sort of, if you put notice to the parents and the things like, and go through the hoops, you get guardianship. You can do it that way. Miller versus Yoakum, I had to think of the case. It's a federal case back about 40 years now that says that you must pay the relatives like you pay foster parents. That's Miller versus Yoakum.
Okay.
And if you talked a little bit about handicapped child, most counties, in fact, as far as I know,
they pay for handicap, right?
If you have a child, and San Luis Obispo, we had 3 categories. I've seen counties with 7 categories. I've seen
Wow.
others, so that if the child has very intense medical needs, you get the highest rate and is young.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the child is placed in a county, say in San Diego, and they have 7 rates, and it's a varying child, but the case started in San Luis Obispo, we have to pay San Luis Obispo's rate to the caretaker in San Luis Obispo. So there's assistance there. So, and then,
so I think what you're hitting on now is the fact that there's an education to this, depending on the environment, depending on the schooling, depending on the home, depending on the medical, depending on all of that. And some people just are reluctant in going and seeking the information that's needed so that they can get everything that they need. Because there's a lot of people that, automatically frown upon it because of the particulars that they claim they have to go through to get the child to be with them in the home, or that they're, it's like, well, they're giving me a sentence. I got to have this kid for this amount of time, or I don't want to be a foster parent, or I don't want to be this. But what we're trying to explain, especially this month, to a lot of the people that are in the community, and it doesn't matter because Felice is in Texas, I'm in North Carolina, but I'm from New Jersey, and you're in California. So we're almost got the span of the whole United States here, from East Coast to West Coast. We got the whole span. And the thing is that we have to understand that knowledge is power. Having the knowledge, even if you go and you say, hey, in California, they're doing this and it's through the federal government. Don't we get those same kind of federal funds here in whatever place you're in? Ask the questions. Ask the questions. And that's why it's important, no matter where the people that come on the show are from, understand what they're telling you. Understand what it is. If there's a federal law, federal is throughout the United States, people. State is in your state. Federal is from East Coast to West Coast, north to south. It covers the whole thing. Okay, so you can't go somewhere and say, well, there's a federal law, but it's not here in my state. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So please pay attention to what Mr. Hillsinger is saying here, that if it's going on there, it may operate a little different in your town or in your state, but the law is there. There's something there that provides for that same provision. So educate yourself. Know what your environment is. Know what it is at the school. What do they do at the school that might be different? What are they eligible that might be different? What's going on at the home? Make sure that you check all the information, because you're doing yourself a disservice and the child a disservice if you don't look into all the programs available for them. Now, as far as the schools, when they go to school, your cases, does the worker ever go to the school?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it's a judgment call there, how often, because the child doesn't want to be embarrassed to be pulled, like you said, about being pulled out of Boys and Girls Club. But it's also a good place to talk to the child away from any other adult, and away from the parent, away from and schools are more cooperative there than they used to be. Sometimes there was little difficulties, but at least I found locally that they are more understanding of that. And just as a aside, now at least in California, we have an educational liaison. So we let somebody know with the school district, you're the point person. This child's in foster care. The confidentiality rules were kind of handicapping the social worker. Social worker, I need to talk with so-and-so, and okay, here's my credentials. What's going on? And then, and it was difficult. Now we have an education who's supposed to keep things confidential, but just then understand, okay, this is the person who's allowed to take the child from school. And you have a situation where maybe a parent is on their mend. They've started to have clean drug tests or whatever. You may want to have normalized that and have the parent the biological parent, even when the child's in foster care, it doesn't happen very often, pick the child up because you want to transition the child back home. Or what we try to do is we don't try to make it okay, you're 7 days a week here with the foster parents, and now 7 days a week back home. We try
and we have to
the
understand
child
too,
back home, but school, if the child's in North County here and the foster parents in South County, which is like 50 miles, as a matter of practicality, you can't do that. But you have to.
And we want the audience to also understand that each case is unique. Just because someone else got to know and their kid is wearing red shoes too, like your kid wears red shoes, it does not mean that your red shoe kid is going to have the same problem. Okay. So, and you could take that to all the way to medical problems. You could take it to environmental problems at the, placement in the home. My kid is with his grandparents and this is what they did to those grandparents. Each case is unique. Please understand that they're unique cases, and your background may not be the same background as the other parents or whatever. Now, I did have an experience with a young, I won't even say young, a baby. She was a baby. She couldn't even stand tall enough to reach my desk, but she had a will about her because her friend was being disserviced in her home. So a lot of times, youth in school and in rec centers and, maybe the playground or maybe just knowing the neighbor may very well report something. They may very well tell someone, hey, we think that this might be going on. And I'm here to tell the audience as well as allow you to expound on it. But the thing about it is it's a dangerous situation of how you handle that information that you get. In the case that I had, it was a 6-year-old who knew that her little friend was being locked in a closet every night because her mother worked nights. But it also meant that if the mother had to work a double or work late, the child did not eat in the morning. She didn't get out of the closet in the morning, and she was very late coming to school. And she just wanted her friend not to be in the closet. She just wanted her friend. She talked about how scary it was for her. And I, as the adult, had to sit there and go, now, what do I do with this?
Right.
Well, on that situation, you're a mandated porter. So something like being locked
you
in
have
closet,
to.
you have
to. But the thing about it is, like I said, it could be the teacher at the school, you're mandated. A doctor, you're mandated. But if you're a neighbor, if you're just somebody that's in the community, what do you do with that kind of information?
Well, I think you need to have your conscience clear. I think that you'd hate to have something worse happen if you didn't call. The confidentiality laws are very strong about that. Now, of course, if you report something that only the neighbor would know, like, the dog's name is Rex or something like that, they're going to figure it out. But the fear of retaliation, I really didn't see much of that. Maybe they no longer became friends with the neighbor, but as far as some sort of overt hostile reaction that was
right.
No, I don't. I rarely saw anything like that.
And we didn't see it either. Yeah, we didn't see it either. But the thing about it is and this is where I'm going with it. It has an effect on the children. It has an effect on them, regardless to if they're told or if it's solved. Because in this case, the little girl came back like a week later and told me she was mad at me because the little girl could no longer come to the boys' club because she got transferred to her grandmother. And the grandmother didn't live nearby.
Right.
So of course the grandmother wasn't bringing her to the boys' club, and now the little girl said, "Well, wait, this just went out the window because I wanted my friend." You blew the whole thing, lady. And
sometimes you have to, we have to do the responsible things, adults, and
that's what I explained.
Not let the child have the bicycle.
And not only that, I went out of my way and called the grandmother, who, we had as an emergency contact on our records. And I just let her know that the little girl who actually reported it would like to see her every now and then. So every now and then the grandmother would bring her by and allow her to still come to the boys.
That's excellent. That's
You know,
excellent.
so it worked out well, but there is an effect
Mm-hmm.
of these type homes, foster homes, temporary placement, like you said, the embarrassment that they may get when a social worker shows up. These are the things that we have to be gentle with them. We have to be careful. And you can, expound on it, but the thing about it is, even though we're talking about confidentiality, the child may feel some type of way.
Yeah, and what I would say, it's a sledgehammer approach, and sometimes the sledgehammer of removing the child is needed. I was a big advocate of what we call a non-detained petition, which basically says, Judge, there's a lot of issues going on in this family, but we don't want to take that final step on removing the child from the home. That may be because the mom had a lot of drunk in Publix, and the child is, I don't want to go into specifics because people say, oh, this is the thing, because there's a lot of, as you say, each case is unique. But there is a provision in the code where you can say, Judge, we're really concerned, and we want to give this person an opportunity. In fact, there's even a fancy term for pre-placement preventative services that the state's obligated to do, except in emergency situations, truly emergency situations. But I don't think it's as used as well as it. And when I talk with social workers in other counties and other states, that mechanism, because there's so many cases and what have you, and it's seldom used, but I think it should be used more often. That's just
more often.
Editorializing, so you prevent that thing. And so you keep the child in the home if at all possible.
As long as you can.
As long as you can.
Yeah, as long as you
can.
can.
Sometimes, again, that will be a wake-up call.
Right.
I'll give you an example. We got a report. The kids were school-age kids, so they were old enough you could talk to them. And the mom had just the most awful, dirty, smelly home. And it was in a relatively nice neighborhood. And what the upshot of the story was that her husband had died. And she had just fallen, he died from illness suddenly. I forget why he died. And she had just fallen into depression. And that's why the home was all messed up.
Right.
We said, yes, even though it's really bad
so
home,
she needed
borderline
services.
real health house. We felt important. Then she said, yes, I need to rally and get myself going. And they're just to dismiss the case without the children ever leaving the home.
Right.
But it was a real
mess. Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'm not a white glove kind of person. You come to my home, you're going to see a live-dead look,
Right. But there's a difference. Yes. Now, what we want to do too is make sure that everybody understands this juvenile court is not the same as criminal court. We're not talking about criminal court. We're talking about making sure that the paperwork and everything is legally transferred, making sure that everything is documented, making sure that everything is done according to the guidelines and federal, state guidelines. We're not talking about just juveniles getting in trouble and then being separated from their parents, or the parents being in trouble and them being separated. They still have to go through the criminal ramifications if criminality is involved.
That's correct. And just to talk about how states do things differently, in Hawaii, all the court, the family law court, the juvenile courts who commit crime, and the dependency court, all heard by the same judge. And in other states, and mainly the East Coast, you don't call children dependents of the child. They're a child in need of services.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the typical term. So there's even different terms there, that equate to essentially the same thing.
The same thing, right? Yeah. But I didn't want someone to think that if a child is in foster care and he commits a petty theft, or he commits theft, or he does, steals a car or whatever, you would be the one to go to court with him. But he still has to go and deal with civil charges. He still has to deal with all of those charges. There's no way that court case is going to be a court case that removes him from the home and your unit not know that he's being removed from the home.
I think that's one of the things that have been better is the better coordination between juvenile probation and child protective services. Better coordination. Is it perfect? No,
Right.
two agencies are perfect, but it's definitely been improved.
And you know what? Some people mix that up, because when you say child protective services, they automatically figure, well, if my kid went out and stole, a car, he needs child protective services. No, he's going to have to go. He may very well go to child protective services, but he's going to go to court.
He's going to go to court, but not necessarily child protective services. He will
exactly.
In California code, it's a 602, as we were saying.
Right. It's two different things. So we don't want people to get, confused with that. Well, I'm going to hit you with the big question now. What's the solution?
Yeah, I want to get to this part as well. I got an ace bandage, and that's maybe better than a band-aid with the ace bandage. But we've got to come up with things that.
What's the solution? And I understand that we have people with mental illness, we have people with addiction, we have people that are no longer able. Like you said, the woman that's going through grief, she needs grief counseling and she needs services as well. So we know that there are some cases where the child has to be placed somewhere else. We understand that. But in the community, what solutions do you think may help a person that's was in your position? What would help you guys get your job where the numbers are no longer 77 to 1?
Well, one, I think that there's been improvement in the system. As I said, the numbers have dropped. In San Luis Obispo County, my caseload was never above 25.
Okay.
But the rules changed, so I wasn't working 1/3 as I was working nearly as hard, with 25, because the rules changed and the expectations changed and things like that. I was with 77. In fact, sometimes places harder. One of the things is we talk a little bit. That's why I wrote my second book, Build a Better Bridge: Social Policy for the 21st Century. Talks a little bit about child welfare, but also talks about the social system in general. What can we do to help people have a stable housing? What can we do to help boys graduate high school more frequently? And this is one of the points I make. A girl who fails to graduate high school, she's more likely, statistically, to have a child that she cannot support. She becomes a drain in an economic sense. A young man who doesn't graduate high school may father a child he's not able to support, but he's also more likely to engage in criminal activity. His failure to graduate from high school becomes a matter of public safety. And I think one of the things that doesn't get enough attention is that boys, particularly African-American boys, do not graduate high school. If you're a white girl, your likelihood of graduating high school is a lot higher than an African-American boy. And one of the things I suggest in the book, which is free to do, this is one of the things I understand. I got my conservative friends who say, I don't want my money, my tax dollars. No one wants their tax dollars wasted. Conservatives kind of repeat it a little more strongly than the rest of us. Is to say to the school districts, you have to publish your graduation rates breakdown by gender.
And
one of the things in social work is you have to describe a problem. You have to name a problem before you can solve it.
Yes.
You have boys, young men who are not successful in life, not graduating. We should say, hey, and the solution in Indiana may be different than in Texas.
Sure.
And so on, as far as to getting boys to graduate, improve the graduation rate overall. But at least identifying the problem is the first step. The other thing, and this is a pet peeve of mine, is one of the things I learned as an author is that women buy 80% of fiction books. And fiction is a much more lucrative thing than nonfiction books. And when in English, what do you have in English classes? Most school districts, most states, you have to have 4 years of English, largely fictional English. I didn't like a lot of the fiction that I had to read as a boy, and I wound up going to UCLA. But a lot of kids, and there's more relative and stuff, but it's still fiction by and large.
Right.
And I sat briefly on the briefly, I said over a year, on the school attendance review board. And most of the teachers would say, acknowledge, yes, we got get the boy reading sports stories and, things that are true so that we can get them involved. And, we don't need to have fiction writers. We need people who can write a police report or an accident report or a sales report.
And not only that, it's funny that you mentioned that. Me raising a boy who hated to read. His reason for hating to read was he had a sister that was 3 years older than him and had read him everything that she already had. So by the time he got to what he was supposed to learn, he had already heard it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So he hated it. I took a Kids Sports Illustrated to school, third grade. Kids Sports Illustrated, because I've made it mandatory that I don't care what you read, but you got to read. You got to read. He would read that book in between while everybody else, because he would zip through the books because they're the same books every year, so he'd zip through those, but he would read it. And I had a teacher that actually complained. She told me that it wasn't fair to the other students that he was bringing material that was not in the classroom. So I told her, well, then let him go to the library that's in the school and have a library book. She said, well, he's second, third grade. They don't go to the library yet. So we had a thing going back and forth for a couple of months because he could read. Now, fast forward. He's got his master's. He's in school. And he's a comedian who, when he gets his script for different movies now, he can read that script in 2 to 3 minutes.
Wow!
So he's a reader. You just what you said. He's a reader. The thing is, we don't have enough readers. We have to find what they like. Whatever it is, it's the same thing when we did math. And I know, Lance, you might be as old as I am and old as Felice is. We used to count. You could count peas. You counted beans. You counted. It didn't matter what you counted as long as you knew 2 and 2 equaled 4. You count pencils, the Acubus line. We would count. So there were different things where people learned different ways to get the same subject done, all except reading. All except reading. We don't emphasize enough for the kids to go and read. Just read. Now you got it where the computer reads to you. They can touch a button.
I just want to share something. I'm not trying to make myself look good or anything, but I had a child that was in a group home. He'd been in a group home out of state for a long time. His dad was just getting his life together. The mom had never gotten her life together. And I sent him a copy of Kids National Geographic as a person.
Yes.
And hopefully that would inspire him to be a reader.
Yeah, because the thing is, it takes them away. Even if their environment is a different type of environment, it takes them away from what they're faced with.
I would like to tell you there's a happy ending in that story, but he really wasn't interested in it. But I felt better. I gave it a try.
Right. You're trying.
Hey, it's the effort. It's the effort.
Before we go, I'd like to finish my answer to that you asked me. So, what have I done with my life, if I may?
Yes.
So I did the ongoing cases for a few years, and then came time to retire, and I finished my first book, the second book I've mentioned. Then, because I knew that women buy more books than men, I intentionally wrote a book that would draw, hopefully, people into the first 2 books, and that was Beyond Amelia, Lesser Known Women of Yesteryear. That's that was inspired by a trip my wife and I took to the History of Diving Museum in Key West.
Wait, the history of what?
History of diving, like scuba diving.
Really? Okay.
History of diving. And there was a couple there that made the first underwater movie. And here was this woman shooting underwater movies before she could vote. Not because she wasn't old enough, because the women couldn't get the vote then. And from a technical viewpoint, the movie is laughable from our viewpoint, but from a technical viewpoint, they did something that was really pretty amazing.
It was really great.
And it wasn't completely underwater, but there were many underwater scenes that are really impressive back then. So that's why I wrote that book. And then so few of the cases that I've had that the families were involved with any type of religion. There were only a handful.
Right.
And I've been a person of faith. I don't wear it on my sleeves much, but as I said, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, a court investigator examines the Gospels. That's my latest book.
Oh, I love that.
Faith was sort of like the air conditioning in the office. It worked in the background for me. You know, and that's why I wrote that book, because I want to bring people. Most Americans have no connection to any organized religion these days. Just
right.
And that's sad. We all need a moral code. We need to have morals, you know, and it's not just the sexual morals. I think that you know, people who get that growing up, they're not going to charge exorbitant drug prices or manipulate the stock market or do any of those kind of.
Well, you know what? You know what though? I think you know, you being what you're in. Just to let you know, I retired law enforcement, and I was inside the prisons with the males. A lot of them lost themselves at a young age because of the simple fact of just what you're saying. Not only was there not reading, there was no real connection to family. There was no connection to community. School became mundane because they really weren't tied in. And religion, even if they went once a week, it was more of a forceful thing than it was a natural thing. Because a lot of times if they went to a new home, it was because the new home required it. It wasn't because it was something that they were raised with. Right. And then a lot of times, again, this same son that I have, I've learned so much from him. I really have, as far as males are concerned. Not that it's easier to raise a male than it is to raise a female. They both have their own things, but
I have 2 daughters.
But the thing about it is that you realize some things with each gender that's different.
Yeah.
You know, and as far as religion was concerned, my son used to say all they do is sing. I'm like, no, did you hear the man talk? You know, there was a sermon in that. And he was like, no, I don't remember what he said. I don't, you know. So it would have to be a part of conversation. It would have to be a part of upbringing. It would have to be a part of, did you understand this? Did you see that? And now as a older man, I'd say in the last maybe 10 years, he's caught on to it, you know, as an older man. You know, now that he has 2 daughters, you know, now he understands a little bit more about, well, I remember when you said this. I remember when you told me about that. But you have to have that communication, not just with the teacher or the social worker or the minister, or, you know, we have to be a community in bringing these children up.
I think there's a synergistic effect. If you have one person giving a child moral guidance, and you have, say it's the mom, and then you have the father giving moral guidance, it's one place where 1 + 1 is more than 2.
Right.
And if you add the clergy on top of that, 1 + 1 + 1 is more than 3.
Right.
So that's the thing. Just to point out, proceeds from my first book, In Place of the Parent, they go to Razom, a humanitarian program that's working in Ukraine. That's what I do. And I've just started a podcast of my own, A Faith in the Modern World, because I think that a lot of people are challenged. We live in a high-tech world, and so maybe the miracles of the Bible seem a little irrelevant. And I think we need to address that, to bring people to faith, bring people so that they feel like, you know, if God's watching, should I do this or not? Should I do that? You know?
Well, not only that, you know what I found over the last maybe 10, 15 years of my last 10, 15 years of working, they can't take it all in at once. You can't hand them the whole Bible, regardless of what the religion is, Quran, Torah, whatever you want to call, you know, whatever you want to follow. You can't hand it all to them at once. If you give it to them in bits and pieces, they seriously want to know, they will go and look to see. But if we can relate some of the things that go on and say, hey, You know that this is said in the Bible. You know this is said in the Torah. This is said in whatever religious format you use in the Quran or whatever it is. Giving them bits and pieces of it and allowing them to go and dig deeper. The curiosity, especially for children, is there.
When I was growing up, going to the pediatrician's office, the children's illustrated Bible was always there.
Was always there. Yes.
But when I took my kids to the doctor or to the dentist,
it was not there. It was not there. Things have changed. But like I said, if you give them bits and pieces, like sometimes, there's, well, where'd you get that from? Where'd that saying come from? Well, it's from the Bible. Well, it's from this book. Well, it's from that book. I listened to someone earlier today explaining to someone that in diversity, that every class of citizen that has come over, that's how we got that big Statue of Liberty, because there were different classes that came over of people that, were running from something that was going on in their country at a certain time. So here's what we got. People don't always know that. They don't know that. They don't. So you got to give it to them in bits and pieces, not in chunks, and not a slap in the face to say you're so dumb you don't know. Just give it to them in bits and pieces, and they will educate themselves and expand on it. If you give it to them in little pieces, you can't give it to them all at once. But I'm so happy that not only are you supporting the Ukraine effort, I'm happy that you're doing that, as well as your books. I love the titles of your books.
Me as well. I'm very interested.
Yeah, just the title of the books, Building a Better Bridge. I mean, how could someone not want to?
Right.
We're walking on the cinders of burnt bridges. So why would we not want to build a better bridge? The lesser known women of the yesteryear. I was like, well, what? How far back did we go? What we're, just the curiosity in the titles is enough to draw people in. I think that knowing that we question things. How does a court investigator examine the gospel? Is he even using the Bible? Do you put it? You know what I mean? It's just things that automatically make people wonder what's going on. And then, of course, you had two sayings. Discretion is a better part of valor. And then Tuesday morning again. So of course, it's a two-part question. Explain that discretion is the better part of valor.
Well, that was one of my father's sayings. And as I wrote my book, I was fortunate. I had two loving parents, a loving father, a loving mother. And so, that was very, great for that. And that was my dad's way of saying, know when to act and know when to not to act.
Right.
Don't jump on everything. Don't react to everything. And to, CPS gets some flack frequently. And the director of our agency said once, I don't spend my time responding to everything that's said bad about me. I'd be doing that, be my whole job. I only sell when it's really going to matter, and then when maybe somebody of authority has their facts wrong or there needs to be some clarification.
Right.
So discretion, better part of valor. So that's where it comes from my dad. Tuesday morning again is from my first book, because of you have to file the petition within so many days, and things happen over the weekends. That means that for court workers, Tuesday morning is the busiest day of the part of the week. And I was a court worker in LA County, and I got to be back a court worker again. And so it was Tuesday morning again.
Tuesday morning, because I was wondering why you skipped Monday, because everybody hates Monday, and you went to
Tuesday morning. I couldn't set a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment or anything for Tuesday morning, because that was the day that I was the busiest.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And not only that, I think that in all of the social services departments, each department and everything else, all the way down to and school in some ways, the community schools are social services. They're doing social service work. Anybody that has a touch with the community, anybody that's dealing with the children of the community, dealing with the elders of the community, we all are a part of the desire to have a community that meshes together. We want it to mesh together. We want it to be the ability to be that. But as you stated in the beginning, knowledge, you got to have the knowledge to know, what's needed, what's necessary. How do I get that assistance? How do I get that guidance? How do I get that help? If you guys are, tuned in and you're listening, this is his website. Don't take it from me, because you all know I did corrections. I did something that I used to always ask: what are we correcting here? The Department of Corrections. What are we correcting? Why are we doing what do we fix? How do we fix it? And part of the steps in fixing it is starting with social services. It's starting with, our babies, our children, our youth. How do we, deal with their welfare? If we break down each of those words into what it is, and we get the information Mr. Hillsinger has given us tonight, you got to know that there's questions that you need to ask, and they can be answered. Don't let them put you off and say, oh no, it doesn't happen here. It does. Federal. Ask questions. I'd like to thank you for being with us for this hour and giving us your information and your books. Everybody go out and get his books, because we need them. Read these books, because these are the books that we need to educate ourselves to be a better society and a better community for all. So I want to thank you. But before you go, Felice has a question that she asks every guest. Yes, we had an opener and in your introduction, and we have a closer. So Felice, go ahead.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so very much for serving the community and the world in such a valuable, important role.
They're going to make me blush. I'm so thank you.
I mean, from the bottom of my heart, because I was going to ask the question earlier about how many men actually are in social work in that type of capacity. We have the police officers and all of those first responders, which is very important. But so I'm just suspecting that for social work, it's more the ratio from female to male is probably vast. But so thank you for having such a heart to serve in such a capacity. And your 4 books are also gifts to the world, I suspect, especially from the titles of them. And I'm really, really anxious to delve into the Gospels in from a court investigator's perspective. That is great. So
yeah, that is great.
I'm looking forward to doing that, because again, God is God. I love God. So my question to you, Mr. Hillsinger, is that, for all that you do, and we believe in self-care here, and we believe in the importance of that. For all the gifts that you give, we need to know, and people need to know, how do you fill your cup, especially when you're giving in such large capacities? So if you'll tell us that is
how do I deal with self-care?
Yeah, well, yes. How do you self-care, and how do you fill your cup? Because, as the Bible tells us, God gives us blessings, and he blesses us in an overflow. But a lot of times when we are givers in service of the community, we
to replenish.
Yeah, we don't replenish ourselves. We're busy giving to others, but not to ourselves. So that's my question.
Well, I was asked that in an job interview, actually, and I told them I always make sure I have a good lunch.
I love it.
And I got to tell you, when I retired, I lost a little weight. A lot of people gain weight when they retire, but I lost a few pounds because I wasn't,
wasn't eating that lunch, wasn't eating that full lunch, right?
Because of the stressful diet. I have to think that my parents were good people. We didn't always go to church, but we did. Religion was important. My mom was my Sunday school teacher for a while, not for a long period. And the importance of just treating people decently and nice. My father was an attorney. My mother was a housewife, well, she was a teacher before, and then she retired to care for me, raise me. That was what women did then. But my dad enjoyed serving people. He didn't make, my uncle was a corporate lawyer, but I don't think he enjoyed his job as much. He made more money. But my dad enjoyed serving people. He represented small business people mostly, people who had the DUI when they shouldn't have, people who were otherwise good people, but they did something stupid. And I think that comes from that. So I was very blessed by having parents who were very caring people and expected you to be nice to people and to recognize that we are all God's children, and that was just sort of a given, and to look for the good in people. So I think that, and secularly, that's called the strength-based approach. And I think to be honest, I think I had a little head start because I was always taught from a religious viewpoint to look for the good in people. And we're all God's children. So even though somebody's done something very, very bad, there's some little good in there that
somewhere.
So I think that helped. That's how I got to be who I was. And I'm very grateful for opportunity to appear on this podcast, to have my own podcast, to write books, and to follow up in this job that was very, very, it had its days. I won't say every day.
Yes.
Right. It was
and we could only imagine. We could only imagine. The thing about it is, even the guy that just rides the highway with deliveries, he has his days. We all look at different jobs and go, well, it sure looks nice that the farmer is out all day, but you don't know about him picking the vegetables and doing everything he's got to do, or dealing with that horse that won't move, or the chicken that won't lay an egg for a couple of days, So we all have those different things that hit us in a job, but we want to tell you thank you for your service. Your service is as important as those that are on the battlefield, because it is a battle to try to make sure that you're taking care of a youth, make sure that you're serving the adults as well as the youth, in a capacity where they could grow from it and they can unite and they could be better for it. So we want to thank you. And again, that LanceHillsinger.net is his website. Go to the website, join in, and give him your thoughts, and by all means pick up one of his books and get into reading, people. Do some reading. And he did make a comment about us fiction writers, but I will tell you that as a fiction writer, some of the time that I write, that is someone's reality. That fictional surface is enough to kick in the thoughts and to help the healing and help them move on, because they see themselves as those characters. We're not talking fantasy. We're talking real, real down to earth. Hey, you got a problem. This is what this character had, the same problem. Let them see it from that point of view. So sometimes we just have to make sure they read. Please read. Please pick up a book and read. That's important, because in these days and time, we can't go by what we're fed. We can't go by what AI is giving us and what the media says is the top information. It's not always the true information. So please be about reading. Mr. Hillsinger, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Felice, for being a part of my team and my uprising, because I feel like I uprise a little bit.
And I apologize. The allergies were getting to me, and then my battery
Your battery went out. Yeah, we saw that. We noticed that. But then again, you had that almighty shovel. Cover the dirt. Cover the dirt.
So I apologize that I didn't have 1,000% attention on you, but again, I do thank you for being here, though.
I thank you. It's been really a pleasure. I mean, it's obligatory to say that at the end of a podcast. This was not obligatory. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That means a lot to us, I tell you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we want to say good night to our audience. Everybody have a great week. We will be back on Monday with another guest. And thank you for being a part of our audience. The replays are on YouTube, so you can watch the replay on YouTube if you only caught part of it. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Good night.